Learning tango is not very straightforward. I don't know if you've noticed that. It seems like such a frustrating process for so much of the time. You might have the best of intentions and take classes and practice and watch videos and take notes. And yet the amount of progress that you might expect to be there is lacking. And it becomes kind of this tug of war between what you feel like you're supposed to be doing and the amount of work that you feel like you have to do in order to get there. So the whole thing can become quite stressful. And I've worked with a lot of dancers who are in this interesting place where they're already good. They already have a lot of great qualities that they developed as followers or leaders, but they don't feel like they've made enough progress. They don't feel good about their dancing. And when it comes to actually them being a bit more objective about where they need to be, where they want to go with their dance, it becomes quite difficult to figure that out, because when we have this impression about ourselves that we're not where we're supposed to be, that before we can move on and actually like do the thing we're supposed to be, dance the way we're supposed to dance, we need to correct something before we get there. We need to change something about ourselves. And I gotta say, I was stuck in that state of mind for a long time. And no matter how I tried to, quote unquote, get better and get to a place where I felt things were making sense and my questions were being answered and I was experiencing what I wanted to experience on the dance floor, instead of getting there, I just kept getting further and further away from that. And when I finally shifted successfully out of that and was able to make that progress, it was not necessarily about, oh, this revolutionary class that I took or this teacher that blew my mind and I finally, eureka, I got it. It wasn't like that. It was more that I became aware that learning tango, this process of actually learning, is an art in itself. That if you take the tango out of it, the actual way that we, having the brains that we have, learn when it comes to movement, and when it comes to movement put to music, it's a really interesting, non-linear process that feels like it should be different because we expect things to progress from point A to point B. But the more we actually try to make it linear, the further away we're going to be from a place of actually getting where we want to go. So from my own journey of growing in tango, and then from working with lots of different dancers, I just see that a lot of the trouble that dancers are experiencing in learning tango has less to do with tango and more to do with the learning and how the learning happens. So I thought I would do an episode where I kind of give you a little bit of a reframe for some of the ways that you approach your tango learning that I hope will be helpful for you. So we're going to start with some of the more common attributes of learning tango. This is something that naturally happens in a tango class when you come in and the teacher starts giving you instructions, focusing on specific parts of the body. And they'll say your left foot or your right elbow. And we learn this way of keeping track of our body in a very compartmentalized sense. So what ends up happening is we have this list of things in our head called the body, and it'll be like the right elbow, the left knee, and we end up assessing our posture and what we do in our movement by scanning the body one piece at a time. So what ends up happening a lot of times is we have a hard time integrating information in that way, even though that's how we are introduced to tango. And a lot of times that's how we're going to learn tango in a class, and teachers are going to speak in those terms. We have to realize that's not how tango works when we're actually dancing it, because we're dancing our whole body. So a lot of times the mistake that happens for people when we continue to work on our dance is we fixate on a particular body part. Let's say it's the left elbow or the right elbow or your wrist or your head. And you'll have this experience very often that when you put your focus on one part of the body, all of the other things in your body kind of go to hell. It's like all of your focus goes into one area and you lose sight of the rest of the picture. So whenever we're working on tango, it's really good practice to learn to feel your body as a whole in relation to the detail that you're working with. What I like to do is imagine that whatever I'm working on, that I am perceiving it from the center of my body, which is sort of the solar plexus, kind of between the ribs and the belly button. So if I put my awareness inside that space and pretend everything I'm doing in relation to this point that's in the center, then our body has a different way of organizing itself. And I will feel the difference in my partner in the way their body tones up or down or how they move, just by shifting their focus from one little piece inside the whole structure to look at the whole structure, feel the whole body in relation to what you're working on. So that's one of the first mistakes. And I want to share this little parable that I read somewhere a long time ago. I can't remember. And I think it illustrates the challenge that tango presents. This parable is about a king, and this student comes to him and he asks the king, tell me the meaning of happiness. And the king says, take this spoon of oil and make sure that the oil doesn't spill, but walk around my palace and see all my beautiful things and come back to me and tell me what you saw. And so the student comes back, and his spoon is empty. And the king is like, why is the spoon empty? And the student says, well, I saw all of your amazing things and I lost track of the spoon. So I spilled the oil. So the king goes, okay, well, you need to keep the oil in the spoon. So go back and do the same thing. Check out my palace and all the amazing things I have and keep the oil in the spoon. So the student comes back and his spoon is filled with oil. And the king says, so what'd you think? What'd you think of this room that I got and the peacocks in the other room and my tennis courts up front, And the student says, well, I didn't see any of that because I was so focused on this spoon and making sure the oil didn't spill. So the king says, this is the meaning of happiness, to be able to keep focus on the spoon while at the same time taking in the whole. And I really like approaching the learning process of tango from this perspective, that you will always be going back and forth between focusing on the detail. You might take a class with a teacher who's working on a specific detail of the dance, and you'll spend the whole weekend working that specific mechanic, let's say. But then after that, that needs to exist on a continuum of your whole body, your whole dance. It needs to be integrated with all the other things. Now, the second mistake that I see is very much connected to this attitude of looking at parts. And it has to do with how we evaluate movement and how we assess our own movement. Whether we're looking in the mirror or we're looking at a video of ourselves. You know, a lot of times I'll ask someone what they notice about their dance when they're watching a video. And they'll immediately point out something about their feet or something about their head. Those are the things that stand out immediately. And it makes sense, absolutely, because the feet and the head are the result of whatever's happening in between, right? However, when we're looking at ourselves in the mirror or on the video, you have to learn to look at the whole thing, the continuous form. You have to look for the line. You have to see, how does the spine connect through the shoulders to the head, or through the lower back, through the hips to the feet? Because when we're looking at ourselves and we're somebody who says, oh, my head is too forward. So then we say, okay, just keep my head back. But the problem might not be in the head. The problem might be somewhere down the length of the spine. And the same thing with the feet. A lot of times, I guess the ugliest thing you can see in the feet is when they're turned in, right? When the feet are kind of pigeon-toed. In tango, that's like something you're trying to avoid. But a lot of times that actually happens because our steps are not measured properly. And we're asking our body to either over-rotate in the direction that it's not made to, or we're taking steps that are too big for us. So that can contribute to the feet being turned in. But you look at yourself and you're saying, oh, it's just my feet. My feet need to be different. But if you don't change what's going on up the line, if you don't change your alignment for the steps, or you don't examine the size of your steps based on your height and how you're rotating, which are all the things that, you know, you can figure out with a teacher, or you can, you know, figure out just by watching a video of yourself, which is something that I've been doing more and more. So if you are interested in something like that, I'm happy to help you out with it. We can set up a session where I can watch a video of you and sort of analyze where things need to change for you to get better movement. So you can do that fairly easily, and you can get in the habit of doing that pretty often, like maybe once a week. And you'll notice that if you just train your eye, like physically train your eye to look more towards the center, once again, like the center of the body, so that your feet and your head are more in the peripheral part of your vision. So you're kind of trying to capture the full line of your posture. You'll notice the more you do that, that the head and the feet will stop being an issue. They'll stop looking like an eyesore, because your brain will just correct it over time. You'll realize what needs to be done. And again, if that's something that you need help with, you can, you know, get help from someone else to help you see that. But it's kind of like a magical shortcut a lot of times for people to progress and correct some of the more consistent postural mistakes that they keep doing. And no matter what they do, they're just like there. A lot of times watching videos of yourself really helps with that. Now, even though I was just saying that we tend to over-focus on specific things at the expense of everything else, we also have very common blind spots. All dancers do. I think these blind spots are just a byproduct of the way the dance works, the way we relate in the embrace. So don't feel bad if you realize that that's your blind spot. And also just know that that's something you're going to be working with forever. You know, these blind spots they're blind for a reason. Now, one really cool thing about identifying the blind spot is that it empowers you to correct it. And one way to spot that blind spot, again, is by using video. So a very common blind spot that I'll mention that we all know is the head forward. A lot of us, we push our heads forward and we don't realize it. I just recently danced with a follower whose head pushed into mine so hard, and her height was just so that her cheekbone pressed into my temple. And no matter how much I tried to pull my head away from her, she would push even more. So for the first time in a long time, I actually had to say something because I was like, this is too painful. We danced a song after I shared that feedback, and she corrected it and she took away that pressure. And she said afterwards, she's like, oh, wow, my balance was so much better. That's amazing. My balance was so much better. And I was like, well, yeah, of course. Our heads are heavy. So if you think about it, we're already slightly leaned forward, especially in close embrace, right? We're slightly leaning forward. So for our heads to also be slightly forward beyond that original kind of give that we give to our partners, so to carry the head forward even more, we're adding a lot of weight to the front of our body, making us top heavy. So, of course, she felt more balanced afterwards. And I felt it as a leader that she was more balanced. I was more relaxed. However, the next time I danced with her, the next time I saw her dance, did I see her head forward again? Yes, I did, because it's a blind spot. This is how these things work. You think that once you correct it because somebody gave you feedback and you're like, oh, I'm so glad this person corrected me. Now forever, I will know my head can't be forward. Guess what? You're probably still doing it. And it's so maddening and frustrating that this is the case, but that's just how it is. And it takes a long time for patterns of movement to shift, for our impulses and our reflexes to shift. Because when we're dancing, we're very much in this sort of spontaneous reflex type of state of mind. We're not thinking. So we can't like slow down and analyze in the moment and really track. So we have to do that work other times. We have to choose times when we focus on it. We have to look for other ways to tell whether it's happening or not, right? So one way I say, you always want to check the pressure of your face to the other person. Like check in, feel the muscles in your neck, like check in with your neck. Sometimes I still do that because, you know, somebody presses their cheek against you. What do you want to do? You want to press back like immediately. So I have to check with myself sometimes, like, okay, is my neck still just screwed on top of my my shoulders and my head is on top of my neck, right? Like you want to do that mental check-in. Now, another mistake, we spend so much time focusing on ourselves, trying to make sure that we're doing everything correctly. And I know it comes from a good place because we all want to, especially for women. As a woman, I'm very much like this. I want to make sure I do everything right so that my partner has nothing to complain about. And if they do, I want them to share it with me so I can correct my course immediately. You know, like that attitude of wanting to be really accommodating, understandable, it's noble, it's wonderful attitude to have. However, it makes us very disconnected in certain ways from our partner because we're so concerned with us being correct, right? That we forget that our partner is also with us. And a lot of times you can tell by the way your partner moves whether your mechanics and your movements are working correctly. So an example would be that if I'm dancing with somebody and I can tell that my follower is lagging behind me, I can tell that it's taking a lot of effort for me to get them to move faster. That's a signal to me as a leader that, hey, this person doesn't move very fast. So how can I move, still musically, still connected? How can I move with them so that they don't have to work so hard? If I'm dancing with a leader, a good thing for me to track is, do I feel that when I'm stepping in any direction that they are about to lose their balance? How many times have you experienced that? That you dancing with your partner and you feel that there's like a little shake, a little tension in their upper body, like they're bracing themselves. That's information. That's something that either they did or you did together, where now they're slightly not in their optimal alignment. So this is key for me as a follower, and I'm dancing with somebody and I can tell they're very ambitious and they're going for something that's, demands a balance on one foot. They're doing some sort of enrosque, lapis combination. I can feel where they need support because their body is tense in a certain way, and I can offer support back. I can give them that support. So that comes from me tracking the effort. So being able to tell when your partner, there's a little bit of that toning up, like they're trying to catch themselves or their arms get really kind of tense for a second. Those are all moments of communication that can inform your dance and make it a lot less stressful. And when you feel that your partner's not doing what you want them to do, instead of plowing ahead and just having this mindset like, they'll catch up. I think sometimes I see leaders on the dance floor like that. They're just like, they'll catch up. Whatever, it's no big deal. And then just plow through their follower. And the follower might have a smile on their face and have a great time, but it looks rushed and it looks stressful and it looks like their partner is struggling. So as much as possible, I like to really be with my partner in that very physical, tactile way in terms of the expenditure of energy. I try to match them in their comfortable level and communicate what I can do within that with the music, right? So that's kind of the game. Now, let's say through listening to this podcast, you've just realized you have a blind spot. You realize that you need to learn to track your partner better, or that you want to focus on seeing your whole body at once and not just look at the periphery. What do you do? How do you start doing that? I want to give you a suggestion for how I work with some of these principles for myself, like when I'm trying to learn a particular sequence, a piece of vocabulary, if I'm working on particular mechanics. This is kind of how I set it up for myself. Taking into account how I learn, the fact that it's not going to be immediate, it's going to take some time. And the most important part of really making the changes is really finding your way into the dance mode and actually dancing, recording yourself actually dancing, not just practicing. So this is why I recommend you set aside time to dance for 2 hours, okay? Not just for one tanda. Because at the end of 2 hours, something magical will happen. So get yourself a practice partner, set a timer for 2 hours, put on some Di Sarli. If you don't know much about Disarli, you can reach out to me. I will send you a playlist of Disarli if you need it. But set the playlist to Disarli, keep it playing, and just start dancing and record yourself. Choose what you're going to focus on. Choose whether you're working on your head being forward or you're working on your step size and measuring how far you're stepping, and dance, and then watch the video. Skip the first few, because really the first few songs, you're just warming up, you're nervous, the camera's there, you're thinking about it. Get to the other side of that when you just don't care, and just keep dancing and keep going back and watching the video. And based on the video, make the next move, dance a little bit more, and just keep going with it, because a lot of times it's the repetition that's necessary. So when you make a video of yourself, you watch it once, you have that cringe factor, you're like, oh, my head is too forward, my feet are too whatever. So then you make that observation, you go back, you record again, you watch that again, and then you might even compare two videos to each other. This is the way I've been working with my students now for over a year. And I gotta say, I haven't seen any method that creates a faster turnaround, a faster change in someone than regularly making videos and just looking at the videos. Now, as I said, if you don't see why something's not working, if you need help figuring that out, reach out to me. I'm happy to help you. So you don't have an excuse for not trying this out. Okay, I'm going to leave you with a reminder that I am teaching a musicality course this Friday on the 31st. It's going to be from 12:30 to 2 p.m. Pacific time. If any of these ideas that I presented today were interesting to you and you want to know other tools that make your dancing and your learning of tango a lot easier, check out this course, because honestly, musicality and knowing how to use music when getting dances at the Milonga is the shortest shortcut you can have to actually succeeding as a social dancer. And the great thing about it is you don't have to have any musical knowledge. You don't have to have any prior talent for music or play an instrument. It's really about learning the fundamentals of what you're needing to hear when you dance and how to connect that with your movement. So this is what this class is for. You don't need a partner. And if you have any questions, reach out to me. I would be happy to connect with you. All right, we will banter on next week. Until then, ciao.